Following the Yuuzhan-Vong War, much of the galaxy had been devastated by the Yuuzhan-Vong. However, Corellia had emerged relatively unscathed, positioning it in a strong economic state. They offered aid for the reconstruction of less fortunate planets. Nearly a decade after the defeat of the Yuuzhan-Vong, the economies of most sectors and systems were recovering. Wealthier worlds assisted poorer ones, and populations that had escaped harm pledged to help those that hadn't. Corellia was rewarded by the Galactic Alliance with the removal of the Governor-General's office. The five brothers united under a governing system in which each planet elected its own head of state, and the system was led by Prime Minister Adel Saxan. As the five worlds prospered, they later pardoned wartime criminals, such as Thraken Sal Solo, who was elected Minister of War for the system and head of state of Corellia. However, this relative peace didn't last long, as historical tensions resurfaced between the central government and peripheral worlds. The Galactic Alliance's reconstruction efforts were hampered by inefficiency and corruption. Economic gains in some systems were mirrored by losses in others, breeding resentment and accusations of favoritism. Corellia began to chafe under the Galactic Alliance, much as it had under the New Republic and the Galactic Republic before. Corellian money and Corellian Defense Force ships were being used by the Galactic Alliance for galaxy-wide reconstruction, seemingly with little benefit in return for Corellia, except for restrictions on its fleet and its ability to forge trade agreements with other systems. In 35 after the Battle of Yavin, the Galactic Alliance became embroiled in the Swarm War between the Kilix and the Chiss. The conflict exposed the Galactic Alliance Defense Forces' lack of preparedness for large-scale warfare, prompting the Galactic Alliance Senate to pass measures requiring higher reconstruction taxes and military resources from member states. Some systems and sectors opposed the idea of surrendering more money and warships to centralized control. This was exacerbated by the sector defense limits of 37 ABY. The galaxy's various planetary security forces were being dramatically expanded by governments fearing piracy, threats from the unknown regions, or other conflicts in a destabilized galaxy. The sector defense limits imposed restrictions on military forces and their capabilities, but enforcement proved difficult, and little could be done to prevent certain sectors from rearming. The Swarm War coincided with Jacen Solo's return to the New Jedi Order. Solo had left the Jedi after being briefly trained by Verger during the Vong War, who argued that the dark side of the Force was not inherently corruptive or evil, as the Jedi believed. During a 5-year odyssey learning from various Force traditions across the galaxy, Solo experienced a terrifying vision of a dark, walled figure ruling the galaxy. Determined to alter this future, he came to believe that any level of sacrifice was justified for the greater good. During the Swarm War, he even advocated for the extermination of the Kilix to preserve galactic peace. This philosophy would come to influence many of his decisions during the Second Galactic Civil War. As tensions against the Galactic Alliance government increased, it was Corellia, with its long history of opposing central authority, that led the resistance. Corellia began to delay its military contributions and tax payments to the Alliance, while at the same time continuing to benefit from Alliance infrastructure and trade advantages. It also systematically opposed further central control over systems and sectors. Slowly, other industrialized planets such as Comina, Fonda, and Bespin began to quietly oppose the Alliance as well. While Corellia did not issue any public challenges, it secretly began to build a fleet comparable to a planetary assault force, equipping its ships with fast strike capabilities and long-range weapons, supplied by worlds like Adumar. In the year 40, Alliance auditors discovered records of Corellia's secret fleet, while Jedi Knight Jacen Solo and his apprentice Ben Skywalker uncovered an Adumrai weapons manufacturer producing concussion missiles and proton torpedoes in violation of Order OAGB 11333B. Corellia argued that the galaxy was too dangerous to justify the sector defense limits and accused the Galactic Alliance of exploiting its wealth. Meanwhile, Corellian scientists were working to bring Centralia Station online, hoping to once again use the power of the celestial supernova-inducing artifact as a bargaining chip with the Alliance. As tensions escalated, Corellia's soft rebel lion led to the imprisonment of key Corellians, including Galactic Civil War hero Wedge Antilles, who was seen as a potential threat by the Galactic Alliance Intelligence Service. As the crisis and the security dilemma between Corellia and the Alliance deepened, the Galactic Alliance chose to try to persuade rebellious Corellia and its allies with a show of military force. Admiral Matrick Klauskin was placed in command of the Second Fleet, including several Jedi strike teams who would carry out a plan codenamed Operation Roundup, aimed at neutralizing the Corellian government and military, including Centralia Station. Meanwhile, Wedge Antilles had managed to escape from the Galactic Alliance intelligence complex where he had been confined and established himself as a liaison between Sal Solo and Saxon. When the Dodonna, Klauskin's flagship, arrived in Corellian space, 5 Jedi operations were put into motion: Slashrat, Purla, Tauntaun, Woprat, and Minik. As the Jedi teams made their way to the surface, Klauskin, haunted by the ghostly voice of his dead wife, was confronted by a well-prepared Corellian war fleet, including Nebulan B frigates and Strident-class star defenders. A collision sparked intense starfighter combat. Meanwhile, the Jedi operations on Corellia's surface met heavy resistance. Team Purla, led by Jaina Solo and including Zek, Kola Hulaya, and Than Mithric, ambushed Prime Minister Saxon's convoy but were met with a barrage of YVH droids. Tauntaun Strike Force, which included Tahiri Vela, Doran Tyna, and Tu Sax, managed to infiltrate Thraken Sal Solo's mansion, but was also attacked. Zack stayed behind on Corellia and remained hidden, later becoming a vital intelligence source. Both teams were rescued by Luke Skywalker's Cargo Point Squadron, part of the Woprat Strike Force. Team Slashrat, a 2-person surveillance op at the Behera spaceport, turned out to be unnecessary due to the fleet's arrival and the lack of launches. But when Klauskin starfighter forces, including a disguised Sile Antilles, were forced to engage, Team Minik, consisting of Ben Skywalker and Jason Solo, infiltrated Centralia Station to try and disable it. After days of training with Centralia's lead scientist, Toval Siar, Ben Skywalker was able to convince a droid, who believed itself to be Anakin Solo, to shut down the station's destructive capabilities, while Jason distracted Thraken Sal Solo. Admiral Klauskin fought the Corellian fleet until he pulled off a stroke of genius. He ordered all Alliance forces to prepare for retreat. While Sile Antilles unknowingly battled her father, her tactics allowed the squadron to disable a Nebulan B frigate before returning to Klauskin's fleet. Alliance forces, including the Mon Calamari cruiser Blue Diver, jumped to Trillis, the 5th inhabited world of the system. 2 hours later, Relida, Trillis's capital, was safely under Alliance control. The Alliance had saved itself, disabled Centralia Station, and established a foothold in the Corellian system. As the relationship between the Galactic Alliance and Corellia became increasingly strained, leaders from both sides agreed to hold peace talks. The Galactic Alliance decided to reopen negotiations in a neutral setting within the Kiate system. However, after an attack on the delegates that resulted in the death of Prime Minister Saxon, the talks collapsed. The Dark Lady of the Sith, Lumia, hoping to ignite a wider conflict, was the conspirator behind the attacks.